Hello, everyone. Happy World Lymphedema Day. We're very excited to have everyone on. And in honor of the day, I'm very pleased to have our founder, Saskia Thiadens, join us today. And she's going to tell us about her history and, her inspiration in terms of creating World Lymphedema Day. And she will also be the one to be presenting the awards for 2021. And then after that, we're going to welcome Dr. Or Professor Neil Pillar, and he will be telling us about what makes a lymphologist, and open it up for questions after that. Because he's in an area where he wasn't sure if the internet was reliable, we will actually be playing a video of his talk, but he will be on for question and answers at the end. So Saskia, if you'd be so kind as to share your video so that everybody can see you. And just may take a second for that to happen. But I hope that everybody is having a wonderful day, and that everybody has done a little something to contribute to our effort today, even if it's just to tell a complete stranger in the elevator about what lymphedema is, and or share a lymphedema story, or say, hey, did you know that today is Lymphedema Day? And they would say, what's that? And then you get the opportunity to tell them all about it. Welcome, Saskia. We're just going to ask you to unmute so that we can hear your lovely voice.
Here I am.
Hi.
Can you hear me now?
We can. So, so we're so excited to have you on today. And, I think that the effort of World Lymphedema Day has grown so large. And if you think about any ripple, the distance and the far-reaching effects are so vast that sometimes it's so easy to forget that origin, which is it's miles and miles away. And I think it's always important to help everybody realize and understand the origin of today and the month. And it really started with you. So please tell us, about a little bit of the history of the organization, just so that everybody can understand that, the incorporation, and then also tell us about your journey in terms of developing Lymphedema Day.
Hey, Jeanette, thank you so much. It's really, really a great pleasure to join all of you and celebrate Lymphedema Awareness Month. Yes, you did ask me to give you a brief history of the NLN and the founding and the creation of Lymphedema D-Day. Well, long story. I can talk about it for weeks, but it's only going to be in a brief review. So in the late 80s, I became aware of the ignorance of the lymphatic system. And at that time, I decided to open a lymphedema clinic, not knowing anything about it, but I just realized as a nurse, patients needed care. I quickly became very overwhelmed. Patients were knocking at my door and calling me, and I became aware of the overwhelming, that there were so many patients affected by this condition. And at that time, I realized there was a need not only for education and support to patients, but education for physicians as well. And so it was, I realized that, I had to create a clearinghouse, and that I founded NLN March 6th of 1988. The day that the NLN was born. And at that time, there were no lymphedema therapists, no knowledgeable doctors. There was nobody to talk to. It was just me and my patients, literally. As you can imagine, it was not easy at all. And neither my patients or I would accept that physicians would tell us, there's no treatment available, you just need to learn with your swollen limb and move on with life. And so that's why I realized the importance of really education and, founded the NLN at that time. And so several years later, I continue to find ways of to increase awareness about lymphedema, and I founded March 6th, the day that I founded lymphedema, founded the NLN to create that as Lymphedema Awareness D-Day, and celebrate and recognize all our courageous patients and dedicated certified lymphedema therapists and doctors, around the world. And so not only that my patients made a difference in their own community, but they reached out to their own representatives and were instrumental in convincing them about the reality of lymphedema and receiving Lymphedema D-Day resolution. And the first resolution passed in Virginia in 2001. And I think we have some slides, Jeanette, that you can.
We did, and
Okay.
I had them for the conference, but forgive me, I don't have them available for today's talk, but I can definitely add and share it in.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. So patients were really instrumental, patient advocates, in reaching out to their local state representatives and convincing them and making them aware that lymphedema really was a reality and that we all needed the attention just like any other disease. And my first D-Day patient that I honored was one of my own patients, Shifra Tate, who was a scientist at UC Berkeley, who had metastatic breast cancer. And she and her husband had hoped to have a child, but she adopted a child and a little baby. And she was an amazing advocate, and she really, really reached out and to her doctors and others and making them aware of the importance that her swollen arm needed attention just like anybody else. And so then I just decided, hey, I am going to present an award every year to very special patients and dedicated therapists as well as physicians as well. So that became very exciting. Every year, local clinics or rehab centers or hospitals started to focus on creating these awareness days and really making, the local professionals aware of lymphedema, but also reaching out to the media as well and writing stories in their local papers and making them aware of the importance of addressing this condition and the swollen limb. I encourage to put pictures in the papers, but many editors, they refused to add pictures in there because they didn't want to scare people. Again, it's important. We need to see visibly the swollen limb and to really identify why we are here. Nobody wants to live with a swollen arm or a swollen leg and continue to be ignored and hiding out. So, so we made tremendous progress overall in increasing the awareness, but that was only, the beginning. And we continue to do this year in, year out, and reaching out to more and more people, and the increased interest among professionals to getting involved, in the field. And I'm really, really proud to say we have made tremendous progress in the last 2 to 3 decades. Um, Today, like when I opened my clinic and started the NLN, we didn't have anybody. I had nobody to talk to. But today we have thousands of certified lymphedema therapists, um, screening and early detection programs in cancer centers. Uh, there's increased research in clinical research in diagnostics and genetics, in clinical and psychosocial issues in academic institutions, and published in peer-reviewed journals today. And again, the overall interest in the lymphatic system around the country and around the world is markedly improving. And I'm really, really proud of Jeanette, who's been doing an incredible job in taking over my baby, so to say, and making a huge, huge continuing, impact as well. And most important is to me, why did I start the NLN? It was the patients who really, really needed the help and were continued to be, ignored. And today, I'm so proud we have increased the and improve the treatment of lymphedema for patients, and many patients today are getting the care they really, really deserve, just like any other disease. We need to be able to go and see a doctor who can diagnose ideally the lymphedema and refer the patient to a certified lymphedema clinic, and maintain the quality of life of that individual. He and she deserve that just as much as anybody else. So again, I am very thrilled that we are celebrating this day today. Again, I call it Lymphedema D-Day, but now it's moved into World Lymphedema Awareness Day, which is incredible to me. From a little baby, here we are, lymphedema awareness around the world. I applaud everyone on this call and all the therapists and physicians who have expressed interest in the lymphatic system and now be able to diagnose and treat, and as I mentioned, keep up the quality of life of patients, with this condition. And most important, to educate the patient and decrease the incidence, identify subclinical lymphedema early, and prevent a chronic lifelong condition. Again, I applaud all of you. Thank you for all your hard work. I know it's not easy to treat this condition, but it's you who are making it happen and making a big difference. Um, Thank you for all your dedication. That's all I can say. And thank you again, Jeanette, for making this all happen and continuing the field of lymphology in the US and, of course, around the world. Keep up all the good work to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Saskia. We really appreciate that. I mean, on behalf of the entire community, we're so thankful for your pioneering efforts. You really paved the way for us, and you made it all possible for us to be here and to be able to continue your work. And I'd like to thank you for the honor of being able to continue the leadership of the National Lymphedema Network on your behalf. Thank you so much.
You're doing an amazing job, Jeanette. Thank you.
Thank you. As my daughter says, try your best and forget about all the rest. And that's all I'm doing is I'm trying my best. So I hope that, it's good enough.
Believe in the cause.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
And so, with that, we would love for you to now announce the awardees of the 2021 Lymphedema Day Awards. And, perhaps if I may, I'll just say that, in recognition of the continued growth of the field and of lymphedema, we had originally indicated that we were only going to have 3 awardees. However, in looking at the stories and reading about their inspirational journeys, we felt that it was just important to be as inclusive as possible. So we basically had a combination of different people. So we have an industry partner, we have patients, we have doctors, we have CLTs, and so Saskia, would you do the honors?
Well, it's my great honor, Jeanette, to present the 2021 Lymphedema Awareness D-Day recipients. And I know you had, I believe you mentioned between 20 and 30 people, and all of them, should have received an award, because all of them are doing such an amazing job, but there was some really outstanding. And the first one is a patient, Melvin Osborne. I don't have the history of the patient and all the other recipients, but Jeanette will be publishing the history in her online newsletter, in the next online newsletter. So Melvin Osborne, hooray, you are the patient who received the 2021 recipient of Lymphedema Awareness Day. And the second one is, if I can pronounce it correctly, Safar Harjihat. I believe that's the way you pronounce it. Congratulations, Safar, for this award. You obviously you received this great honor in receiving this award this year. And the next one is Maurizio Ritti. I believe he is from Italy, if I'm correct. Jeanette, is that correct?
Italy? That is correct, Saskia, absolutely.
Yeah. So we have awardees from around the world. And the next one is Donald Thomas. So congratulations to all of you. And again, you all should have received an award, but you 5 were very special. So keep up the good work, and thank you for all your hard work. You deserve it highly. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Saskia. And then there was one more name that might have been missed in the transit via cyberspace to your email. We also have John Holland from Absolute Medical, who was given the award as well. So indeed, congratulations to all 5 of you. And we will be reaching out to connect with you so that we can elaborate on your stories and publish them so that the rest of the world can read all about your journey. So thank you so much. Saskia, before you leave us for a moment, because we're going to play Dr. Pillar's video, do you have anything to close in terms of Lymphedema Day?
Well, continue to create the awareness, continue in your community, continue to educate your healthcare professionals. And as I said, we've come a long way, but we still need to move even further. And again, I'm so proud of all of you, and just keep up the good work and believe in the cause, and don't be afraid to talk to the doctors and make them aware that this really is something that can be taken care of, because I am personally now started a screening and early detection program in San Francisco, and working with primarily with melanoma patients, and it's made such a huge impact, not only to the patients to decrease the incidence by way of identifying early subclinical lymphedema, but in the hospital, I've really been able to educate the physicians, all the, and of course it's all only cancer related, but educate the radiation oncologists, the medical oncologists, the social workers, the nurses, don't be shy, just speak up and make them aware that you can help this patient population. So again, thank you all and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Saskia. What a great message. So we're going to now move on to Dr. Pillar's talk. And again, if you can just give me one moment to share the screen, and we will be all set.
So,
I'm Professor Neil Pillar, the Director of the Lymphedema Clinical Research Unit at Flinders Medical Centre and Flinders University in Adelaide. I'm a lymphologist, and I thought we'd have a chat about what's a good lymphologist, how to recognise them, and what you know about them. Now, lymphologists are a diverse group of people depending on their education and background and qualifications. I started off being interested in lymphology way back in the late 60s. And I was stimulated by one person, and that was a Professor John Casley Smith, and also his partner, Judith Casley Smith. They started my interest in lymphology and lymphatics and lymphatic diseases. And that's how I started. But nowadays, there are many, many different pathways lymphologists can take. Some of my medical students, for instance, have been trained as an MD, and they've taken on sections of their course which are about lymphatics and lymphatic disorders and diseases. Some others may not be GPs, they may be in other areas of medicine or medical research, and they may have taken on extra courses afterwards. But nevertheless, a lymphologist is someone who is interested in lymphatics, their diseases and disorders, and understands about all of the events and situations which may influence the lymphatic system of your body and every person's body. Now, like I mentioned, the training for lymphology varies. I used to run some courses for our Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. That was a couple of days courses. You can't learn much in a couple of days, but you are more knowledgeable. And this is what's important. Knowledge is important. A good lymphologist also will have lots of experience with lymphatic conditions and disorders. For instance, way back in the mid-70s, I was working with Professor Dr. Leo Clodius, who was a surgeon in the Kantonsspital in Zurich. We were looking at how to create models of lymphedema, and through those models, we could understand them. So you need that experience. Other people have got different experiences from me. And, I'm always asking the question, am I a good lymphologist? Well, I think I'm okay, but I'm sure there are better ones, and lymphologists with different experiences and different expertise and different training. Nevertheless, I have got a strong commitment to improving outcomes for patients on the basis of the acquisition of good knowledge, of the basis of conducting trials, and also making sure that a lymphologist is working together with other people from other health discipline areas. That's really important because together we work as a team. A lymphologist cannot work on their own. They need input from other areas of medicine and other areas of health and well-being and the like. So we're all in it together, but nevertheless, training experience is important. Then the next one is expertise. And how do you gain expertise? Well, you gain expertise through many years of interacting with various lymphatic scenarios. Lymphedema, for instance, is one of them. That's when the lymphatic system has failed. Or you may be looking at situations where the lymphatic system has been damaged for some reason, and that might be a traumatic injury, it might be surgery, it may have been radiotherapy, or your lymphatic system may just not have formed properly. So a good lymphologist will recognize these sort of things and be able to look at the different pathways that have occurred along the way. So a lymphologist then is a person who is very well trained at being able to recognize different scenarios and to be able to differentiate a lymphedema from a cardiac edema, for instance, or from an acute edema, or from another swelling which might look like lymphedema, but may be a lipedema or a lipedema. So what I'm saying here is a good lymphologist or someone with good lymphological training has got an ability to undertake a very careful and very accurate and appropriate differential diagnosis. That is the most important thing. So we've got so far looked at training. Yes, it can be varied from a few weeks to a few days to many months of hands-on training. Experience is actually seeing and interacting with patients and situations where we've got a range of lymphatic disorders and diseases, and expertise comes with that experience. It comes from telling others around the world about what you know and having that knowledge peer reviewed. And that means all of us in our lymphatic area, most of us would actually publish articles. It might be as simple as a case study. It might be a group of case studies. It might be a small clinical trial or a very large clinical trial. When lymphologists publish these sort of things, they're subjected to something called peer review. Now, you might find this boring, but peer review is when our colleagues look at our work and tell us honestly what they think about it. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it indifferent? Do we need to do something different or better? That's what it's about. That's about having our credibility checked by others. And, in our world today where there are many, many different disorders and diseases and sub-disorders and sub-diseases, it's important that the person who's helping you has got good credibility, good knowledge, and has been affirmed by other colleagues and other people in their own institution or nationally or internationally. That's very, very, very important. The other important thing, is if you just remember back when you were educated, okay? Do you remember all those early things that you received in your education? Well, I certainly do. But if you stuck with those and you didn't move on, you'd be living in the past. And I must admit, there are some people who I know, in fact, a couple of my older students from many years ago, who are a little bit living in the past. They're living on their prior knowledge, their prior expertise and experience. And what I'm saying is, by heavens, we have to continually upgrade our knowledge, our experience, and our expertise. Bring it up to date, which means you've got to look and read widely. Reading widely means looking at good quality lymphatic journals like Lymphatic Research and Biology, the Journal of Lymphology, the Journal of Lymphedema, and a whole range of other journals. And that means you can keep up to date. Keeping up to date is also very important by attending meetings. Now, I know with COVID-19 nowadays, a lot of these meetings are virtual meetings. It doesn't matter. You're still keeping up with new developments as they happen. You're also keeping up the maintenance of a network of people with whom you can communicate. If you get a problem in a person who presents to you that's beyond your knowledge or your expertise, well, you can ask these other people, these other colleagues, what about them? What's going on? Can you help me with this issue, this problem? So it's about the camaraderie. It's about the knowledge that comes from being linked to others, to a network. Really, really important. Now, one of the other things I believe is very, very important is listening. And, there are people around the world who sometimes will talk and talk and talk, just like I'm doing at the moment. I'm talking and I'm not listening at the moment to you. And that's a very, very important characteristic of a good lymphologist. Listening, hearing your story, knowing about your individuality. Yes, the lymphologist or the surgeon or the specialist or your family doctor can order a whole range of tests, and that'll tell them something about you. But sitting back and listening to your story is also important. In fact, it's probably just as important, if not more important sometimes, because hearing your story tells us about what you want. What's your worries? What's your concerns? What do you want from treatment? And, do you want an improvement in the size of your limb? Do you want an improvement in how your limb feels? Do you want an improvement in how you can do things, your functionality? And that focus comes through listening to you as a patient. And what that also means is you have to be strong, you have to be heard, and you have to let people know that you want to be heard. And if you sit back and say, "Oh, I'm just listening to you talking," that's not good enough. You have to listen, respond, and communicate and have a discussion about your issues. It's your life, it's your lymphedema. You're at risk of lymphedema, maybe, or you've got it, and it's you who needs to let them know about what you would like done about it. The expert, the experienced, will then inform you what can be done, what can't be done. And when we're looking at the internet, there's a lot of rubbish out there, unfortunately. There are a lot of things which seem absolutely wonderful, absolutely miraculous, but they're not. They're problems. They may not work for you. They may make your lymphedema worse, in fact. And that's a big problem. So I urge you to always look at websites, get information that is accurate, that is responsible, that has been peer reviewed, if you like, that has been looked at by experts and they're happy with it. Okay, and then discuss what you've learnt with your other expert, your lymphologist, your family doctor, or your therapist. Now, the websites that are good, I mean, you obviously know a lot of them yourself, I'm sure. The National Lymphedema Network in the States, the Lymphology Network site, the International Lymphedema Framework site, and then many sites nationally around the world, the British Lymphedema Network site, and the Australian Lymphedema Association site. There are many accurate, good sites to look at. They may not give you all the information you want, but they'll give you accurate, appropriate information, and it'll be updated. So that's most important. So I think one of the other things that I was saying, you need to talk, but the expert, the lymphologist or whoever, must listen to you, okay? And in a way, when they're listening, they're learning from you about what you want. And that's very, very important. One of the other big issues, I think, when we're dealing with the lymphatic system, and the lymphatic system is a sewage system of the body. It removes all the waste products, the toxins from your cells and your tissues and all that, and takes them around back to the blood, and it gets processed in the liver and the kidneys. But also, it's part of the body's defense system. It defends you against cancer generally, although sometimes the cancer cells get trapped in the lymph nodes. Well, you might think that's negative. It is when you've got to have them removed, but it's good because at least sometimes the cancer cells have been trapped there. So that's a positive. So the lymphatic system is about a waste disposal system. It's about a defense system and keeping us going in as good a nick as we possibly can. Now, that's a very, very complicated system. It's influenced by your diet, the microbiome, the communications between your gut and your brain, the communications between your brain and your lymphatic network around the body. That determines how fast your lymphatics beat. They're all pulsating, folks, right at the moment, about 6 to 10 times per minute. If you're excited and if it's a higher load, they might be pulsating quicker than that. But nevertheless, they're slow, they're easygoing, low pressure, low volume, but they have to work well for us to maintain a status quo, good equilibrium, in other words, good health. Now, because the impacts of lymphatic function and dysfunction are so widely spread around all of our tissues and all of our parts of our body, that means we have to be part of a team if we're going to give you good advice. We have to look at things holistically, and you need a good practitioner who's a very holistic thinking person, okay? If you've got a swollen limb, a swollen arm or a swollen leg, don't just think about the arm or the leg. Think about all the other reasons all the other things that might be going on behind the scenes. How's your blood pressure? How's your blood vessel integrity? How's your capillary integrity? Do you bruise easily? That might lead us along another pathway. How is your kidney working? How's your liver working? And all these sort of things. We have to look at all of those pictures together. We must be holistic. But you know, one of the most important things I've got to say always is you've really got to actually make sure you get an accurate differential diagnosis by an expert or by a group of experts. Okay. And what that means is that if you know exactly what you've got, if the expert knows what you've got, the physician, the clinician, the therapist, or whoever knows what you've got, then they can target and sequence the treatment appropriately to that problem. Okay. That's why we need holistic care. And I guess what this also all means is we have to complete the circle. You give your information, the expert collects the information, they have a look at what needs to be done, and we complete the circle by doing it. And then, most important, we have to hear from you about what was that doing? How did that doing help you? What sort of difference did that make to you? We must complete the circle. Super important. So I hope my little talk has helped inform you about a lymphologist. What makes a good one? Well, like I said, we've all got diverse backgrounds. Some are medical, some are not, some are research, some are scientists. But a good lymphologist will have good breadth and depth of experience and expertise and training. Super important. And we have all our wonderful training programs around the world and in the States. You have Gunter Close, you have the Dr. Vodder School training therapists, you have the Foldy School international training, you have all sorts of different training schools. They've all got good credentialing and good information to give to people who want to learn. But the most important thing is find someone who you can communicate with, who you like, who fits your mold, who can sit down and chat with you at the same time as giving you accurate, precise, objective information. That makes a good lymphologist, but it makes a good person generally as well. So I wish you well in your relationships with your lymphologist, with other people in your healthcare team, and may all go well for you for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that video, Professor Pillar. And if you're on the line, which I believe that you are, can you please share your video? And it's a wonderful talk that you just gave us. And I think that one of the things that we're trying to achieve today, this video will be recorded and it's going to be posted on our website. And I think that what I was also hoping you'll be able to guide the patients through is for the patient who might not even know that they have lymphedema yet. So like it might be where a patient is just doing some research, I have some swelling, and then they might be directed eventually to the NLN website. And then they need to be guided like, well, how do they go about figuring out whether or not their swelling is lymphedema? So then do you recommend, like, what's the first step? What do you recommend is the first step?
Okay, good day, everyone. I'm up in the Barossa Valley in north of Adelaide, so the communication up here may not be quite as good. I'm sorry about my video. I noticed my voice was out of sync with everything else, so my apologies there. But the first step in a process like this is always one where you've got a knowledge as a patient. And it may be just basic knowledge, simple knowledge, but that you have to have some sort of knowledge. And sometimes, you have to get that from someone, and you have to get that from someone who's already knowledgeable. And making those first links with the right person is always difficult. And I've got to say, in Australia, the way it works best is with our lymphedema support groups. Quite often a patient will see that a lymphedema support group, for instance, our lymphedema support group in South Australia exists, and they'll have a communication with them. And those members of the support group or the president of the support group will then point them in the right direction to a person who they think can then add to that patient's knowledge. So that's why I think patient support groups around the world are absolutely critical first step in all of this. It's not always the first step that everyone takes. You might get some information from a general practitioner or a family physician or someone, but that first step is critical and crucial because you've got to feel comfortable to make that first step and then move on. And as we all know, that first step is really important because early detection, early remediation of the problems, early identification of them is critical because you can make the biggest difference then. So it's the first step. And if anyone wants to just have some more information about that, we can chat. So Jeanette, I presume you're in control of this today. So is there any other questions?
Yes, well, we have a little bit of a quiet audience here. And there aren't a whole lot of questions, but allow me to check the chat to see what's being said here. But let's see.
Well, I can now see some chat from Madalena.
Yeah. So she says, good evening from Portugal. I'm a physical therapist and would like the professor's opinion about autologous lymph node transfer and its effect on lymphedema treatment. When is it a good option?
This is certainly not my area, but I've read much about it and I know a fair bit about it. But there are appropriate times for lymph node transplants. And one of the big issues is we're building up our knowledge about the impact of lymph node transplants in terms of long-term knowledge, but we've always got to take care of the donor site, the site where those lymph nodes come from. And nowadays, we're getting very much better in terms of imaging and knowing where to get that lymph node from by virtue of indocyanine and green imaging of the superficial network, for instance, and those sort of things. But it's a tough decision. But we do know now that for the lymph node transplants and for any lymphatic intervention from the surgical point of view, that it's better to do it early than to wait late, simply because, as every patient will know and everyone listening will know, that as lymphedema progresses, the tissues change. There is more fibrotic induration, and it's more difficult to find a new functional pathway. And for that reason, yes, early lymph node transplantation is wise, but we always must think about the donor site. What's going to happen there? What's likely to happen? And with new information acquisition nowadays about our genetics, we can also understand whether there is a risk of the donor site removal of that lymph node causing a lymphatic problem distal, that means downstream to that site. And as you're well aware from the wonderful work of Peter Mortimer and all the crew, that we have got a whole range of different genes which may determine our lymphatic system functionality, our composition of it, our structure of it, and those sort of things. We should actually acknowledge that in terms of the information we have before we indulge in any autologous transplants, I think. That's my personal opinion. Sorry for being so wordy.
No, we love it. We absolutely love to get a piece of your mind. So thank you so much. We have a couple more questions, but they're not exactly related to our topic today. But as a doctor, perhaps you'd be okay in answering them. Another question is, can our lymph nodes be filled with debris and become useless?
I'm sorry, I'll just clean up my screen again. I was just looking at other people's questions and stuff too. That's an interesting question. Filled up with debris. I mean, I guess that means they're dysfunctional. And I've read some articles in the past of lymph nodes becoming full of material, say from the lungs, or literally dust and all those sorts of things, and that impairing their functionality. But can they be filled up with debris? I've not seen any good quality evidence for that, although there are some people around that believe that that may be so. That means external debris. However, the lymph nodes can lose their functionality when they develop what you might call an induration. Their system just doesn't work. They can't get the defense system that's associated with the lymph node into the area that needs it within the lymph node. And then they can't generate the cells
that are needed to defend the body against some information which is in the lymph node, which needs to be defended. So that lymph node may become dysfunctional. And I hope that's understandable for the patients. I'm trying to keep it nice and simple to you. But yeah, any organ or structure in our body can lose its functional ability, and certainly a lymph node can. And there are lots of ways in which that may occur. But generally, that's associated with fibrosis, if you like, the buildup of fiber within the structure of the lymph node and around it, which influences its ability to function well. A very good question, though.
Thank you, Dr. Pillar. Another question is a bit of a personal situation, and it says, I have secondary bilateral lymphedema after a hip replacement in 2012. I think I might also be showing early signs of lipedema. How can I confirm this?
The Lymphedema or the Lymphedema Foundation has got some very good information on their websites about this, but certainly there are a number of fact sheets and information sheets about recognizing the differences between lipedema or a lipedema and a lymphedema. And one of the characteristics about lipedema is that it's generally, or lipedema, sorry, I should call it lipedema for you. Lipedema is that it's generally got a tendency to be present in a family. It's got a genetic history. In other words, some of the early signs is that you may be likely to bruise more easily than a normal person. Your skin may be cooler than a normal person's skin. Your skin will feel lovely and soft and flexible, like baby-like, if you like, compared with a lymphedema, which is sometimes hardened, thicker skin. And there's a whole lot of other characteristics there which you can get off of these websites, which will help you differentiate between a lymphedema and a lipedema. And that's that important first step. But yes, you can get as a patient some of that information from the internet, from those reliable places like I was talking about, but that's the time when you need to start to talk to, it might be your GP, your specialist, or a therapist, or someone who can make sure you're being guided in the right direction for that information.
Thank you, Professor. Jacqueline would like to know your thoughts on the pros and cons of using pneumatic compression for managing lymphedema.
Sorry, can you say that once more?
Oh, yes. Jacqueline would like to know your thoughts on the pros or the benefits and disadvantages of using pneumatic compression.
Pneumatic.
Yes.
Okay. There's some very, very strong evidence out that it's beneficial. This is intermittent pneumatic compression, I presume. And the evidence is very good for its benefits. But one of the most important things about this and anything else we do to our a structure, for instance, my hand or my leg or my foot or whatever, is that we always have to make sure that the pathways between the area where we've got fluid and fluid accumulation and where it's going to empty out, which in the case here is for the legs and the tummy and the left arm and the left side of the head, is here, right here. That's where all of our lymph empties into. And we've got to make sure that if we're pushing fluids out of a place where there's excess fluids, that it's got somewhere to go, that we've created an empty pathway. That I guess I use it here in Australia, the term, we've got to make sure we've emptied the buckets. You can't put water in a bucket that's full of water. Likewise, you may have the best pneumatic pump ever, but it's going to have a tough time pushing fluids into an area that's already full of fluids, because number one, like I said, there'll be fluid there, but number two is that there won't be as good a pressure gradient. In other words, it'll be harder for the pump to press out our fluids. And this is where many pumps and garments and our wraps and that get a bad rap. Literally, it's because the body is not prepared properly to take these wraps. We haven't emptied the buckets. We haven't prepared the lymphatic system for this new flow of fluid from an area that's got too much fluid in it. So my thing is, this is what I was saying earlier, please think holistically. If you've got a swollen leg, and you're using a IPC apparatus, intermittent pneumatic compression pump on it, make sure you've done something to clear out the more proximal territories first in your tummy area, your chest, and that it can empty up here easily.
Thank you so much. Another question is that Lynn had remembered reading somewhere that tattoos can turn lymph nodes black. Is this accurate? And if so, what are the ramifications of the dye being in the lymph nodes? Does it affect the lymph node integrity?
Very good question. I've got to say, I'm not sure how that sits. I've read a few articles on tattooing, and there was one a couple of years ago that patients might like to read in the Journal of Lymphedema, JOL. I think it was about 2016, about tattoos and the like. But I know that our inks have changed from the very early days. And I know that some of those early day inks, which are based around, I think, ink from cuttlefish and animals and things like that, to the more synthetic ones nowadays, I think there's less ability of them to diffuse through the system, but that's not my area and I'm not sure. But it would certainly make some interesting reading in an interesting paper. And I'm always encouraging all of you out there as patients to publish, to present, to talk about your case, because from those cases and from those case histories, we learn a lot. And if someone's had an experience with a tattoo and it's not been such a good one, and you think something's happened as a consequence of it, write it up as a case study. I, as an editor of Journal of Lymphedema, would be happy to accept them and have a look at them and see if we can get them published for you, because that knowledge, your personal knowledge, is going to help others. So an excellent question, and I don't have the answer, but I'm going to look it up after this, that's for sure. Thanks, Jeanette.
Hey, thank you so much. I have a little bit of background noise here in New York City. Some sirens are going off, so please try to excuse that. The next question is, or first it's the comment and then the question. Australian lymphologists seem to be more knowledgeable about the use of cold lasers for breaking up fibrosis. Can you please comment on that?
That I'm not 100% sure about, but I know that here in South Australia, working with a woman called Anne Thalander, that she and I and a group called RianCorp, Anne Angel, did the world's first, from what I recall, the world's first double-blind crossover trial of laser, and showed that it worked, but it took quite a long time to achieve the results we wanted. And we did 2 phases in this, and we didn't get very much in the first phase. Then we did the second phase of the trial, that means longer treatment, and we got some really fantastic results. That was objective and subjective results. Now, I've got to say, laser's not for everyone. Our thoughts here and our knowledge is linked to the fact that laser is more likely to be effective when there's some degree of fibrotic induration in the tissues. Now, for all of you out there, fibrotic induration is those little tough bits in the tissues, the fibrous bits. And if you want to liken it to something, it might be the fibrous bits you get in a piece of steak or something like that, those chewy bits. And those chewy bits might be there as a consequence of, say, something called cording, axillary web syndrome. They might be there as a consequence of radiotherapy or the surgery or whatever. And when fibrotic induration is detected, no matter where it is, where it's specific sites or it's general in the arm, then that's when we believe that laser, low-level laser, is likely to be more beneficial, because it can help break up that tissue. It doesn't actually physically break it up always. What it can do is stimulate our own body defenses to get excited about the change in the tissues, and then they get in there and begin to attack it. So level laser, it's absolutely great when it's appropriately chosen. And this is what I was trying to say earlier on, that we need to make sure we've got enough information about ourselves so we can target and sequence the treatment, okay? Some people will go in for treatment and they'll see a therapist or someone, and they will have an arm which has got lots of fiber in it. And that makes it hard for a manual lymphatic drainage or lymphatic drainage therapy to work, because the fluids just can't move easily if there's lots of fiber. So under those conditions, maybe low-level laser therapy is more appropriate. So we've got to have the information so we can sequence and target treatments. That's what a message I want to try and get across to every patient. Just don't just rush in and get a treatment. Make sure that it's appropriately targeted.
Thank you so much, Professor. The next one is about training. And I imagine that this is somebody in Australia. Actually, no, forgive me. Let me scratch that. But the question is, there are some internationally recognized schools and training programs such as Vater, Foldy LeDuc, and Casely Smith. The issue in the US is that there are training programs that are popping up. And the question is, what questions do you suggest that patients ask when interviewing therapists to choose a lymphedema therapist to begin treatment?
Yes, my feeling there is that, like I said, yes, you need to be comfortable with the therapist, but you must be sure of their training and the depth of training and the appropriateness of it. And I know here in Australia where the appropriate training groups are and who they are. And there's in Australia, for instance, in our Australasian Lymphology Association, we've got a national practitioners register where the Australasian group looks at the credentials of those people and will list them on our site if they're appropriately trained by an appropriate group at an appropriate level. That's the most important thing. And I'm sure that that also is so in the States. And I know in the United States and Canada, there are some groups who have got extremely high credentials in terms of their training programs, and that those people who are trained in them to the top level would be one of the best people you could seek in terms of information about treatment and management of your lymphatic systems. And I can name some of them, but I don't want to name them because I may miss out on someone who's very, very important.
Thank you so much, Professor. Another question is that with COVID, there have been various changes to some schools here in the US, some which have basically changed their format so that it's 100% virtual in training. What are your comments and thoughts on that?
That's interesting because quite a few years ago, our medical course changed from looking at cadavers, that is dead people, and learning from them, to looking at virtual models. And you could section a virtual model. You could look at a disease or a disorder. And, you know, I've got to say, as a bit of old school initially, I was somewhat negative about some of that. But in the end, it actually allows a lot more information to be acquired, a lot more questions to be asked in a range of conditions that could be presented side by side through this modeling. So there are some advantages of virtual courses, and you can see and do things. But however, you can't beat the patient contact, that individuality. That's really something that's important. And it used to worry me a little bit that sometimes the first time a student, a medical student or a physio student would actually see a real patient might be 1 or 2 years into their course, into their award. But I think we can now see that that's an acceptable part of it. And we're also going to see a lot more of that from the point of view of, at least until COVID's controlled, in terms of the use of telemedicine, where a therapist or a specialist or a surgeon will be talking to a person over the internet about their conditions and asking for presentation details or looking at them and those sort of things along with their medical records. So yes, it's sad to lose that face-to-face contact. It's sad to lose those groups that come together and stay together. But I think that's the way of our future at the moment until we sort out this issue. And I don't think we should be negative about that sort of thing. But we need to know that, yeah, we've lost that little bit of contact, but we can keep it up through meetings like this, asking questions and not being afraid about asking questions and seeking information. What's your knowledge like as a therapist? What did you learn? What program, what level did you go through in terms of your training, and who did it?
Thank you. You actually answered that question. That was a follow-up. The question was, well, what exactly would you ask? And so you just mentioned those questions. Would you like to add any more questions that a patient should know and be armed with in asking of a therapist?
Well, number one, level of training. Number two, with whom. Number three is finding out, is that therapist suitable for you? And I know that's pretty hard with questions, but you can generally get a feeling of talking with someone, whether you're comfortable with them, they're comfortable with their knowledge, and what's their style of dealing with you, what's their manner of dealing with you. So that's very much an individual. And I've got to say to every single patient listening out there to me, don't be afraid of swapping from one therapist to another if you're not happy, okay, with them. You can move on, you can find someone different. There's always someone else out there. And that's what I guess medicine and health management, health control is about, is you and your relationship and getting someone who you're comfortable with and vice versa.
Thank you, Professor. I absolutely agree with that. I think that sometimes patients feel obliged to stick to that first therapist who just so happened to be, assigned to them. But I do believe that that's absolutely very important. That if patients don't feel as though they're getting the care that they would like, or there's not the good chemistry, to absolutely feel empowered to find another one. I echo that 100%. And another thing that I would like to add is when interviewing, because sometimes, sometimes patients will never even make it to being able to connect to the therapist. They are kind of blocked by the admin staff. And so what I like to suggest is asking if the clinic offers complete decongestive therapy. In other words, does the clinic offer therapy 5 times a week? Because, for the most part, that is complete decongestive therapy. And if that is not how the clinic runs and they do something less than that, and they're limited to, they're very prescriptive in terms of just saying, no, all patients here receive therapy 2 times a week or once a week, that already gives you a sense of how they practice. And so if intensive therapy is offered, it means that if you are a patient who needs intensive therapy, that you will be able to get the therapy that will give you your lymphedema the best chance to reduce. So thank you for that. And then a couple more questions, Professor, if we can still steal some more moments of your time.
Yes.
Thank you. Fibrosis for febrile lymphedema is so tight and hard. Would you recommend percussion massage gun for treatment to break down the fibrosis?
A percussion massage gun, is that right?
Yes, percussion massage gun.
I've never heard of that one, I got to say. So I'll have to defer on that one. Saskia, your screen lit up, Saskia, just then. Do you know about it? So I'm sorry.
I've never heard of it either, Neil.
Way you go, Saskia.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I personally have never heard of that either. I'm sorry. It's interesting, but unknown to me.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. I guess what it's looking at, I can see the percussion, anything that's sort of literally in the primitive sense, percussively, pounding the tissues is likely to break up some of the fibrotic induration. And once you change the structure of the induration a little bit, your own body defenses, your mononuclear phagocytes, and that might come in and help break it up a little bit further. I mean, who knows? But any sort of therapy like that, this frictional massage and the like, might actually. Sorry, that's my wife Tony. She's up here in the hotel with me.
Hello, Saskia.
Listening to everything, and Saskia and Tony know each other quite well. So okay, yeah. Tony's leaving now.
Very nice.
Okay, so back to all the patients who are listening. anything which may break up the fiber may help lymphatic drainage. And, you know, you can do frictional massage across the grain of the fibers, and some massage therapists will tell you about that. That also helps soften the tissue. How do we know we soften the tissue? How do we know we remove the fibrous tissue? Well, you can objectify that by instruments called the fibrinometer, made by Delphin, or the ingerometer, and whole lots of other things, or ultrasound and the like. So you can tell whether something's working or not. And that was the other key thing I think in my talk that I'd like you to think about and remember, is that evidence for your actions. What's the evidence for the action that you're about to have done on you? Or when someone has done something on you, massage or a drainage or a compression pump, what's the evidence that it was effective for me as a patient? You know, don't hesitate asking that. What's the evidence out there for what you're doing to me is worthwhile, and how is that affecting me? Have you got some information about how I've improved, apart from how I might feel and how I might look? What's the actual objective evidence behind it? So I don't mind what it is, and this compression stuff, high frequency ultrasound, or who knows what it is. If it's effective for you and there's some evidence behind it, go for it. We might actually learn something.
I definitely appreciate that open-minded approach, Professor. Thank you for that. Another question is, have you heard of pulse electric magnetic frequency therapy that has been used to benefit the lymphatic system?
No, but you know, I've struggled always to keep up with things. I would ask the person who I think is Brianna. I can see Brianna. A good question. It's making us all think. And I'd say, well, let's go and have a look and see what's in the literature about it. What's the evidence and information for it currently? And, you know, it might be a new therapy. There might be only some case studies, but let's get some more case studies and more information about it. But as with all of these, you know, we've got to keep an open mind. We've got to continually move forward. We can't dwell on our current knowledge or our current treatment regimes. You know, and I guess an example of that was the lymph node transplants and those sort of things. In the past, we waited and waited and waited before we did these things. But now we know if we do these things earlier, we get a better outcome longer term. So, I mean, who knows? And we've just got to have a look for the evidence out there and then respond to it and react to it.
Thank you, Professor. Two more questions. And this is for somebody who might be new to lymphedema. But Sandra is asking, why do you have to empty out your stomach and chest if you use a compression pump? And what is MLD? Okay,
that's good. Every question's a good one. The reason is that our lymphatics, let's imagine our lymphatic system's all over our body. It's a superficial system and a deep system. And every single bit of fluid that leaks out of our blood vessels, have a look at your toe. Every single bit of fluid that leaks out of our blood vessels in our toe or our lower legs got to go up through our knee, through our groin, through our tummy, through our chest to that point here in our left shoulder. And that's the reason why we have to empty out our chest or empty out our tummy of fluids in our lymphatic system so that fluid can go along that pathway most easily. You remember, if you've got a pipe full of fluid, you've got to have a pressure to push it along that pipe. That's how our water system works. And if there's already a lot of back pressure on there, for instance, if my car is sitting on my hose in the garden, I can turn the tap on, but nothing flows. So the same thing can happen sometimes with your lymphatic system, but it's not as high a pressure, of course, is that if there's not a good pressure gradient, lymph will not flow along those vessels. And likewise, if there's lots of fluid coming from our tummies and lots of fluid coming into our lymphatic system from our stomach area, tummy area, intestine area, then you know, it's a bit like I guess it's a bit like a small side road coming into a freeway. It's going to take a long time to get onto the freeway because the stomach, the intestinal area may have a large volume of lymph, whereas coming from the leg might be a small volume. As an example of that, your average leg volume of lymph in a day is 400 mils. That's 20 mils an hour. That's average. From the arm, it's around about maybe 100 mils a day, 5 mils an hour, nothing much. So they're very small volumes, but we have to get them away and we have to make it as easy as possible for that fluid to leave. So that's why we empty the fluids out of our chest and our tummy our proximal areas, they're called, before we try and get fluid out of further down in the legs or in the hands or whatever. Empty the buckets. You can't put water in a bucket that's full of water, is always what we say.
What is MLD?
And the other question, what is MLD? That's manual lymphatic drainage. There are all sorts of terms for that, but manual lymphatic drainage means helping the lymphatic system work manually, and it's generally done by some gentle massage strokes over the lymphatic areas, lymphatic territories. But always, one thing that's important about the manual lymphatic drainage is that it should always work on the most proximal part first. So if I've got a swelling here in my forearm, where we work quite often will be here on the opposite side, the chest, the axilla, the armpit, that is, the upper arm here, and then the area where we've finally got the problem, the forearm. And that's what manual lymphatic drainage is about. And there are a lot of schools that will teach manual lymphatic drainage along with the other holistic parts of caring for our lymphatic system.
Thank you so much, Professor. So we would actually like to invite Saskia back on because she just wanted to say a few words to you.
Oh. Hey, Neil.
Hey, Saskia.
So great to see you, and thank you so much for this great talk and all your wealth of knowledge.
Thank you, Saskia.
Yeah, you know, we need many more lymphologists who look with your lovely wife. Oh, nice to see you. You know, we need so many more lymphologists like you around the world. And, you know, we've known each other for many years. I think we first met when my first ISL conference, I believe in Chennai in India. And we met at the airport.
1999, Saskia, when we were at the airport.
And we didn't know where to go, millions of people. And then you left me. That was the worst part of all. Arrived at 5 in the morning in a hotel. Yeah, you know, I so agree with so much you talked about, and specifically, you know, we need to stay up to date, specifically in the lymphatic system, and not get stagnant. And I think a lot of the doctors are still thinking, okay, we just put a patient on a pump and that will be the end of that. And no, I mean, look where we are since 1999. The evolution is phenomenal. It really is. And hope, you know, for our patients. And that's what's so important. Another thing I really like is what you talked about is listening to people. Today, everybody is so damn busy, you know, patients in and out. And, you know, when I first became aware of lymphedema, I started my clinic in San Francisco in 87, 88. There were no doctors. And, you know, I learned from my patients. I listened and I understood what they were talking about, and, you know, leading into, okay, this doesn't work, that would work, et cetera. But listening is so important, and the accurate information. And again, sharing information with other clinicians. You know, again, when we talk about cancer, share it with everybody, the whole team, the whole cancer team. The lymphedema therapist plays such a big role in the treatment of, you know, cancer-related lymphedema. Join and encourage the doctors to invite you to the tumor board meetings. There's so much to learn, and you can provide your input during those meetings as well. And, you know, and educate them. As I said earlier, do not be afraid. You therapists know more about the lymphatics than many of the doctors. And we know the lymphatic system is barely touched in medical school, and physicians have minimal knowledge of the lymphatics. It's such a phenomenal system. It's so interesting and so fascinating. And
and that's a big problem, Saskia, that we don't have enough training in our medical schools still at the basic level about the lymphatic system. As I said, in our course, our students used to to take a semester of lymphatic knowledge and lymphatic anatomy, physiology, but that was not every single student had to do that. It was just the selected ones who were interested. And I guess that's what it's all about, is finding the person who's interested, who's committed.
Yeah.
It's just like finding the good cardiac, a cardiac person or a good liver person. Not everyone's an expert in that area. So you have to find the right person with the right level of expertise.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and another thing too, and that's what I'm experiencing in my own program, my screening and early detection program, because there's still doctors are saying, no, do not talk to my patients pre-op about lymphedema. And I think that's incorrect. If you provide them, you know, in a gentle, diplomatic way and educate them in the lymphatic system, signs and symptoms, risk reduction practices, these patients are so thankful. And you don't know how much they appreciate. And you see them 2 weeks, 3 months later, 6 months later, and they become aware of the importance of screening every 3 months to make sure that they don't have subclinical, lymphedema. And so there's, again, as I said, we've come such a long, long way, and really able to help so many patients, rather than listening back in '87, doctors would tell me, there's nothing you can do. People just need to learn to live with it. No, that was not
A long way.
Here we are.
And Saskia, a lot of that's because of you, and we thank you so much here in Australia for everything you've done to start up our Lymphedema Awareness Day and our lymphedema awareness around the world. We can't thank you enough for that. But I want to just come back to one other thing, and that is, just remember, for all of us, for some of you who may be listening, you don't have lymphedema, but you may have a risk of it. And it's identifying that risk that's important. It's having that baseline measurement, those early measurements, that early assessment in those early days, because if we can identify the risk, we can reduce the risk factors. And if we can reduce the risk factors, your chance of getting lymphedema is reduced. And we all know there are some common risk factors. Obesity is one of the highest risk factors that comes up. Mayfield's work, everyone's, Nicole Stout's, all our publications say that that's one of the key risk factors, and we can manage that. And some of the others are a little bit more subtle, related with diet, with skincare and all those sorts of things. But that's important. But for you who are listening as patients, there are those of you who are at risk of lymphedema and are worried about getting it. Identify the risk factors. Yes, that can help you. And then we have the others of you who have already got lymphedema, who are looking for a solution to better manage it, better treat it. And it's all about communication, awareness, and finding the right person, like we've always been saying all the way through.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Professor, we greatly appreciated your talk today. Saskia, we greatly appreciate you being on and helping with announcing our awardees. And it really is such an honor for me to be spending some moments with you on World Lymphedema Day today in 2021. So thank you so much for all of your meaningful, impactful contributions to lymphology. And, we just can't get enough of the both of you. So thank you so much on behalf of the entire lymphedema community.
Thank you,
Okay.
Jeanette.
Thank you all. Thank you again. Thanks so much,
you.
Jeanette, for organizing everything and for taking over.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you, Saskia.
See you, Saskia. Bye.
Bye. See you soon. Maybe.
Todscenes.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to end today just by thanking my team. And, there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes, and I just could not do it without them. It may look seamless and sometimes with glitches on my end, but without the rest of my team, it just would not be as seamless as it seems. So I'd like to introduce my team to you. I'd like to do this every time because I'd like them to know how much I appreciate them. And so coming on right now, we have Veronica Sanires. She is our social media manager. On the bottom right of your camera or screen is Erin Sokolsky. She is our marketing manager. On the bottom left is Jennifer Williams. She's our continuing education manager. Also behind the scenes is Christy Blair. She's the one who's in the chat, and she is our project manager. Not able to come on today is Alyssa Fiorito, who is our garment program manager, and also Nicole Ballard, who is our membership manager. That should be 6. Yes. All right. Right. Did I get everybody? I feel I might be missing somebody. I did get everybody. All right. I'm always nervous about forgetting about somebody. So there is 6 of them. And if I forgot to mention anybody, forgive me, I will mention them again tomorrow. So on behalf of the NLN, thank you to everybody who stayed on to the very end and for joining us today. We hope that you found some valuable information out of our talk today. And for those of you who have been joining us daily, every day. Professor, thank you one more time so much for your dedication and for your talk today. So have a lovely evening, morning, wherever you might be joining us from, because we do have an international presence. We're so grateful for your support, even if it's just with your time and attention. Thank you so much and have a great time. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, Jennifer and crew. Good on you all. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.